It's live.
It says we're live. Do you have confirmation?
Well, it says that we are.
Let's see if it is.
And
we're live. Okay.
We are?
We did it.
Okay. I don't know if anybody can tell you. Oh yeah, we are. Cool.
So I don't know if we have the chat on this.
We do.
We do?
Well, the chat is on. You should be able to see it. I turned it on. Show comments on stage. So
let's see. I'm going to post here. Can anybody see this? Let's check on that. Kill this.
Oh, you see it's coming up.
Oh, there it is. It came through. Okay. The peeps will be able to see this. This looks good.
Yay.
Oh, Ken's there. Okay. Oh, there's an echo.
We've got an echo. I think I know why. I'm gonna turn my YouTube off.
Oh yeah, you got to kill that.
All right. So, and you probably should do the same thing.
I've done it.
Awesome. Let's do it.
All right. Well, gang, welcome. Got a little rebrand this week. The show is now called Practical AI instead of the PageMotor live show. It's a little bit more applicable, broadly applicable than just PageMotor. I think from a topical standpoint, that opens things up for us and makes it, a lot more applicable to all the different things that people are trying to do with AI. It's sort of the most interesting topic of the day, of the current time period. And so we're rebranding the show to match that, but the show is sponsored by PageMotor. So PageMotor will still make plenty of appearances, but it's not solely about that. It's not solely about me sitting here blabbing for 90 minutes. So I think it's actually going to be a lot more fun. And so the mystery guest this week, the mystery moderator, is the lovely Olga Pishnenko. She's here, and she is an expert at leading discussions. And I'm not going to pass off too many accolades for her here. You're going to see it live today.
No pressure.
We're going to have a great discussion. We've rounded up, really, she's done this. She's rounded up a bunch of topics from podcasts, from interviews, things like that. So discussions that are happening in the world of AI, in the world of web development specifically. And she's rounded these up. We've got a lot of great touch points for the discussion this week. And I'm going to let her take it from here. And we'll get this thing going.
Yep. Thanks for the introduction. Appreciate that. I am the biggest fangirl of PageMotor. So what's happening every week is I get lots of newsletters, and I've kind of check out a lot of shows that are done for WordPress, for AI. And I decided that we are going to talk about all the hot topics that I am seeing and I'm reading. So all the things that we're going to talk about today are the fresh off the press, or so to say, from this week. So I'm going to try to get this done in about 45 minutes so we don't go too long. And I'm going to ask questions to Chris because he is the expert. I'm sort of the AI. I love AI. I use AI every day. So for me, AI is huge. I like to learn about it. But what I usually do, I ask Chris a lot of questions, and then we decided, why don't we just do it live, and then everybody else can learn as well about what's the latest and the greatest going on. And then more importantly, how does PageMotor going to solve a lot of these problems that are coming up? So with all that said, welcome, and we're going to get started. One of the first shows that I've taken a look this week was This Week in WordPress with Nathan Wrigley. They had an episode this week called AI is Lit. And there were a couple key takeaways that I wanted to start bringing up to Chris' attention, and for Chris to sort of share his perspective with us on what he thinks, what exactly does this mean for WordPress or for AI and kind of the web development in general. So one of the topics that they talked about, how AI is dominating the news in WordPress. It's like 50% of news in WordPress these days is all about AI. And I wanted to ask Chris, kind of, it feels like they're scrambling a little bit in terms of kind of retrofit WordPress into AI. I mean, with all the legacy problems they're having. So I want to see, what do you think, Chris, about all this AI native architectures that are talking about now in WordPress, and kind of what is your take on all the buzz that's happening right now with WordPress and AI?
Well, so the whole topic exists because AI is the new thing, the new frontier where the most gains are going to be acquired. That's pretty clear to everybody. But what's happening with WordPress is an attempt to shoehorn AI initiatives into the WordPress platform. Now, this is going to prove to be a massive failure. But, there will be small gains along the way. But what's going to happen is that this is going to start looking like a race. Imagine a racetrack, and you've got a Formula One car at a racetrack running against a Honda Civic. And unfortunately, in this case, WordPress is the Honda Civic. Now, you can do a lot of things with that Honda Civic. You can drop a new engine in there. You can put a new suspension in the car. You can make it pretty fast for a Honda Civic. But the reality is, people are eventually going to see that it's running laps against a Formula One car and just getting destroyed because it's a completely different class of vehicle for the problem at hand. So it's no surprise that AI is dominating that landscape in terms of what's being discussed. It's the only exciting thing happening in all of WordPress, but it's never going to work because WordPress itself is not built to speak the language that LLMs need. And so what does that mean? What does it mean that WordPress doesn't speak the language that LLMs are looking for or can speak fluently? The way WordPress works, and indeed, this is not just a WordPress thing. Everyone who deals with software is running into this problem. And the way WordPress works, it's disparate. So there's options in the WordPress admin, for example. Depending on where you are in the admin, the options behave differently. The way you need to get those options on the pages is different. The way they work is different. There's all these differences. It's just options. You're kind of doing the same thing everywhere, but unfortunately, you have to do different things depending on where you're trying to operate with WordPress. There is no unified design language that exists within WordPress to leverage this larger pattern.
Okay.
And the pressure that AI is putting on everybody is to look at their existing systems and say, oh crap, what we need is a unified design language here. That way the LLMs can operate in all these different areas without needing specialized input for every little unique scenario that arises. WordPress doesn't have that. I actually built something like this for WordPress back in the 2010 to 2012 era. It was something called Thesis 2. And it was an attempt. So basically what Thesis 2 is, it is a series of translators. Imagine these little black boxes that you speak something to the translator, and the translator, translates it into a language that WordPress can understand depending on where you are operating or attempting to operate within WordPress. So that does exist for WordPress. And I think that's what anyone in these AI initiatives is ultimately going to figure out, that they need translators for the various aspects of the software. But that doesn't solve the main problems, because you find out when you get into this that there's still a lot of tortured adaptations that need to be made. And it's like a game of whack-a-mole. These idiosyncrasies keep popping up. And whenever these idiosyncrasies or exceptions, however you want to refer to them, whenever those pop up, you have to provide specialized input. And with WordPress, it is a never-ending landscape, because you've got plugins, third-party plugins, integrations that you need, to build anything significant. You have to integrate these third-party components. And because of the nature of WordPress, it's an infinite landscape of things that people could have done or have done, and LLMs can't leverage that.
All right. So one of the things they talked about in the show was Abilities API. Have you had a chance to look at that one?
I looked at it briefly.
It's a standardizing AI interaction with WordPress, and it validates demand for semantic interfaces, like optimize SEO, but WordPress needs an API layer to interpret them.
Right. So this is basically what I just said. This is essentially a translation layer, but in a more limited capacity. It's not comprehensive for all of WordPress.
So is the Abilities API, is that part of the WordPress program? Is part of their... Because I know they have this big initiative now in New York City. They're building the team and kind of catching up. Have you heard much about that? What's your take?
I don't know if Abilities is part of an official WordPress initiative, or if that's a third-party thing.
Web Page or whatever his name is. He's the one who's...
Yeah, I don't know if that guy's affiliated with Automatic or paid by them. I'm not sure about the relationship.
But basically what you're saying is that it's exactly what you just talked about. It's basically they're trying to figure out how to layer this together.
Yeah, this is what they're going to run into. They're going to run into the translator problem. They'll build some translators, but they're going to find out that they can't ever catch up because the landscape is not built this way.
It's not something about semantic slots and low code UI. Does it sound any bell? Does it ring any bells for you?
Well, it rings some buzzword bells that are all over AI right now. Like Replit is built on this exact thing. We're going to find out later in the show. There's something called Foxcell for Shopify that essentially operates on the same principles.
Okay. Well, let's keep going.
Does this.
The other hot topic on the show was Elementor's Angie and Hostinger's Cody. So it's like agentic AI race in WordPress. So kind of page builders are racing to bolt on AI agents for AI, UI, and backend ops, but they're still wrappers on bloated stacks. So have you looked at Elementor's Angie or Hostinger's Cody? Like, what do you think? Kind of.
I haven't played with either one, but so Elementor is used by tons of development agencies to roll out sites for clients, and there are specific problems that all these agencies encounter whenever they're rolling out sites or doing conversions from existing sites, that kind of thing, doing e-com integrations. There's specific problems that they encounter. And so these agentic AIs are attempts to smooth out parts of those processes or the processes that these agencies are constantly dealing with. But the ability of these agentic AIs is limited by the WordPress architecture and that plugin landscape. So no matter where you're operating with WordPress, whether it's this agentic thing, whether it's specific, directly with the software, you're always going to run into these problems of idiosyncrasies because of the nature of the platform. It's haphazard. It's not patternized. And so you can't, like, it's like an upper bound. It's sort of like the speed of light. You can't go any faster than this. You can do a lot, up to that point with WordPress. You can go up to that point, but unfortunately, it will be shown soon enough that software that's designed from the ground up with these patterns already in place is going to be able to go way farther, way faster. And
I like how they call them, how they named it wrappers on the bloated stacks. And I thought that was interesting because you always talk about how, if you have a bloated thing to begin with, it's going to be really hard to build something fast and good to start with. And by the way, anybody who's watching us, if you have any questions about any of this, remember, I am just a normal average human who doesn't speak tech language like Chris does. So I'm doing my best to translate the human into tech and tech into human. But you guys ask questions about any of the topics that maybe you've heard something about it and you're interested. We'll be happy to talk about that too. But so Elementor's Angie and Hostinger's Cody, there are two different things that are competing for the market with their AI agent for sort of UI and the backend ops, right? So they're
for agencies and developers to do their jobs more efficiently with AI.
All right.
There's another tool called Etch that's coming out. It's basically trying to serve the same purpose.
And what do you think? How does the PageMotor kind of fit into this?
PageMotor is the Formula One car in this whole analogy.
Okay.
And everyone else is bolting parts onto a Honda Civic. So I want to achieve the fastest lap times that are possible on this racetrack.
All right.
I don't want to just build up a crappy car and be satisfied I'm zooming it around the racetrack at a little faster than I was before. I want to set the world standard for the fastest lap times, and I want to keep going from there.
Gotcha. All right, let's move on. The same show, they talked about MCP adapter and AI experiments plugin. So kind of go back to the point that they're experimenting with Sandbox AI workflows.
Who's doing this?
WordPress is experimenting with Sandbox AI workflows.
That's cute. That's so nobody gets bored.
And this feel like bolt-on playgrounds versus deeply embedded intelligence, kind of what they talked about. Have you heard anything about MCP adapter and what that is? And
so Anthropic, I guess, came up with this MCP adapter. It's Model Context Protocol. I'm not exactly sure. I think Ken in the chat here probably knows more about that than I do. But I think it's just kind of a standardized approach to problem solving with software with AI. Problem solving for software, for creating this. This is sort of the output structure. This is the input structure. It's sort of like a defined landscape.
It talks about building real world workflows into CMS roles directly. So whatever that means in your language, and maybe
it's kind of open-ended. This feels like a lot of marketing jargon to me.
Okay.
To make WordPress sound relevant in the current AI discussion. But again, it's I just don't see the point on bolting parts onto the Honda Civic.
Yeah, no,
it goes back to the main analogy.
We'll go back to that. One of the other things that they mentioned on the show this week was the AI's disruption of design and content workflows. There's this fear, especially from agency owners, about AI displacing creative roles. What do you have to say about that?
Well, so we will find that the highest use for AI and the best usage, and like what really comes out of that's like, oh, okay, what's really impressive is when AI is used in as an augmentation layer or an amplifier for human creativity and human skill sets. It will replace very pedantic tasks that are not creative and that do not require associative thinking, that kind of thing. But when I have interfaced with it so far, when it comes up against creativity, creative problem solving, that kind of thing, it's AI stinks. It does not compare and cannot compare to human ingenuity in that capacity, at least not yet. And to me, it seems like we're really far from that. So I think that this fear about replacement is misguided, but I do think that there's a clarifying process happening here where we're going to see that certain roles that we had previously in our companies were low value and did not need to be there. And we're also going to see that certain roles were maybe undervalued or had more potential than we were squeezing out of them. So for these creative types who use AI as an augmentation layer, their value, their stock is going up radically because they're going to be able to do more, better, faster, and get more standardized results and things like that that smooth out processes for companies. And low value roles are going to disappear, but they should have anyway. Like the fact that hiring bloat is a thing is cringe to me, but it's real, and AI is going to help kind of even out.
Interesting. So that's kind of what I have from that show. I want to move on to the next one, but any like big takeaways from kind of the first one that I talked about? Any kind of
just this idea that shoehorning AI into existing architectures is the theme of the current era. We are finding out, everyone is finding out across industries, just across software in general. There's a come to Jesus moment where people and companies are going to realize that, oh crap, what we really need is to rebuild our architecture from the ground up to be able to leverage this new landscape that we're in. A lot of money and time and energy is currently being spent and still going to be spent on trying to shoehorn it into these existing architectures. But the larger conclusion from that whole endeavor is going to be that, oh crap, we need to refactor.
Okay. Well, thank you. Moving on. One of the big topics, the news topics of the week was that Anthropic will limit Claude code due to power usage. And so I think it starts August 28th. And they say like 5% of the users are going to be affected. But what they're saying is that they're reaching the scale stress, I guess, and that the signals a move towards tiered usage-aware AI pricing, and that's what they're limiting Claude, because some people use it nonstop. They're sharing passwords or they're sharing licenses and whatnot, and they're just sick and tired of that. So what I thought was interesting is that this is probably one of the first signals of limiting or putting some kind of limitations on AI for developers. Like, what do you have to say about that? What is that signaling to you? That usage-based tiers, what does that mean for creators, developers? Kind of what is it signaling so far?
Limitations is probably my favorite aspect of the whole AI revolution right now. Limitation currently occurring now on two fronts, we'll say. One, the one you just mentioned about these actual hard usage limits, which I'll come back to. But the other one is this, the segment we just had, where the conclusion is that our systems are not good enough to leverage AI. Well, if your system sucks, you're having to do a lot of input and back and forth with AI. You're going to bump into usage limits. I don't know why that's so difficult for me to say. But if your systems are streamlined and ready to receive stuff, and you know, like, okay, here's the Markdown file I'm going to need, here's the JSON object structure I'm going to need, you can feed the LLM very specific stuff that you need. You're going to have a lot fewer interactions and a lot fewer negative interactions where AI spits back a bunch of crap and you have to like refactor.
Right.
So that particular limitation is huge, because that says the bottom line for that is that says your software needs to be better. The thing that this AI is feeding into must be better. This is probably the most important thing that's happening in the current age, because since the year 2000, at a minimum, processing power has gone up faster, but it has outpaced everything else.
So you could get away with crap, right? So you could get away with like using all the bloated code, all the things.
Software.
But now they're saying like, no more. We are taking this seriously, and clean code is going to be even more important.
Software could be terrible before because of hardware increases, but now AI stepped into this equation, throwing a big wrench in it, and says, "Wait a minute, your software actually can't suck, or you can't use me very well."
Gotcha.
And so, thank God, we finally hit this moment where quality matters again.
So, do you see that trend continue with other kind of AI? Tools?
Oh yeah, because of these usage limits, that is further clamping down on this idea that the input and output signals, both sides of things, must be cleaner. They must be better to make these interactions work better and to be more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
There's some side discussions here about, like energy usage for AI, energy usage for crypto stuff, Bitcoin. Like energy usage is sort of another related topic that matters here.
I'm sure you love that one.
And all this says is that all of our component pieces must be better. They must be more efficient. They must be better designed.
And not to toot PageMotor's horn, but obviously this is why you're so passionate about making it as nimble as possible.
Yeah, I kind of lucked into this because I just like when things are right, but there hasn't been external pressure that says things have to be right. Well, now there is external pressure that says things have to be right, and PageMotor's already ready to meet everybody right at that point.
All right, next topic, moving along. So Google's
like Ken comment, you have to be cautious with some of these news stories as they're often clickbait. Add AI is using loads of energy to a headline and you're guaranteed more clicks. Absolutely. That whole energy thing, we'll come back to that later, I think.
Yeah. With Anthropic, I thought that was interesting because Claude is one of the go-to tool for developers, and they are bumping it up in a month in terms of their usage limits and stuff like that, because they're seeing over abuse or abuse of whatever the limits that they've had. And I thought that was like, that made me think. I was like, I bet that's going to have some implications for later. But
so they say 5% of users will be affected. Well, if you just use the 80-20 principle, you assume it's actually 25% because only 20% are actually using the crap out of it. So 25% of the people who really use it are going to be affected by this.
So that's interesting. So let's move to Google. So Google is playing catch up. And there's an article about Google's vibe coding app arrives late. And it's called Opal. They're testing this thing called Opal. It's a vibe coding. I know you love a vibe coding tool that lets users build mini web apps via text prompts. It's tucked inside Google Labs, months behind startups like Curation and Lovable, and years behind the concept itself. So it's aimed at non-technical creators, even though the market is already crowded with Lovable, Replit, Base44, and now they're feeling like it's a bureaucratic FOMO than a product vision. But I wanted to bring that up because clearly wasting resources on this, and I wanted you to talk about the vibe coding aspect itself, and then kind of what do you think that means for Google? Obviously, I don't think anything serious, but what do you think?
Well, I hate vibe coding. You already said it. But this is a continuation of a trend that has been...
First of all, explain what vibe coding is. Like, what is vibe coding for you?
Vibe coding is this... one expression of this might be, you provide a prompt. I want an app to track my dog's food intake and to track like the macros and give me a report, an email report every day with like the previous day's things. This is just a crappy example, okay?
Okay.
And so you ask for this, and the vibe coding app gives you everything you need. You install it, I guess, on a server or somehow. Maybe it runs on their own little cloud thing that they can provide and you're dumb enough to pay for. And then you get this little bespoke app that you wanted to make, but you didn't have to do any code at all. is basically no code.
Okay.
Vibe coding equals no code. And the insidious thing about this is this no code thing has been trending up since 2010. And it's a pie in the sky idea. You can't really build anything significant with no code. You can have an architecture that exists, and I guess since you're the one who wants to do no code, you have to hope this magically appears for you. You can have an architecture that exists and an LLM that knows how to speak the language of this architecture. There's that terminology again. And you could vibe code through that. But without this piece, it's useless. And so there is some potential there, and that is going to continue to be actualized because people cannot get off this topic of no code. They cannot do it. There's this belief that we're going to like make things that matter at all with no code. It's not going to happen, but people are still going to keep chasing that rabbit. So
is it like a catnip for non-technical users?
Yes.
So they're like, everybody can do it now?
I don't know what this fascination is with like wanting to make building stuff accessible to everybody. Like, do you want everyone going out and building houses, laying down bricks? I mean, if you have no experience, do you really want that? I don't know why we extend this to code and software. And also, so there's another layer to this that I don't think anybody stops to think about. But if you're going to have something that's actually useful, it's not going to be useful to just one person. So if you vibe code something for you, presumably many other people might want the same thing. When that happens, you're operating in the realm of business. And so if you have some little vibe code thing that you made, the odds are not only good, it's like 100% that someone's actually going to take this seriously, build something for real, have a sales team, and actually do marketing and make this thing real. Which makes the vibe coding layer to this, like, why did this even exist? What was the point? All it does is prove concepts. It doesn't actually, there's no rubber meets the road moment with this. It's just all proof of concept all the way down. And it's like, well, we already know that we can build software to do things. Why are we reproving this concept?
So with the companies that they mentioned, the Lovable, Replit, and Base 44, out of those three, like, have you heard anything? What have you heard? Good, bad, the ugly, or like are they?
I mean, I've seen some
valuable.
I've seen some minimally fascinating cases from Replit.
Okay.
And team usage within bigger companies. So like a team in Google might be using this to roll out particular initiatives. I think that there's an app tie-in, like iOS app tie-in, Android app tie-in, like that kind of thing, that layer to some of those. And I can see where there's some leverage there.
Yeah.
But I think the reality when you touch on this is that the companies that they cite is, like Google's using our vibe coding product. Well, the people who are in Google who are using your vibe coding product aren't.
Well, Google's just came up with their own Opal, and there's a joke that they're gonna quietly fold it into something else before 2026. So they're
pretty
just
much a guarantee.
The cloud. So let's move on. There's this company made the news this week called Magic Patterns. It's the AI prototyping platform transforming product design. Have you had a chance to look at that one? It will be the most interesting for web developers. It focuses on interactive UI prototyping from prompts or screenshots, gathering user feedback, and direct web deployment, directly aligning with AI-driven workflows for building sites, themes, or plugins. So do you have much to say about what Magic Patterns is, and if that's has any gold underneath?
I mean, I think this is just a larger trend. I don't think there's anything special about Magic Patterns, but like it's kind of a catchy name for what's really happening here. So for example, within PageMotor, there's like an options language. There's a PageMotor options array format. You could think of this like a language. If the LLM or you, any developer, gives PageMotor an array of data that matches this format, PageMotor can take that and do amazing things with it. It can create an options page for you in the admin. It can save and retrieve those options and give them to you for use exactly when you need them. And essentially, that is a key component in turning an idea about, well, I want an option to do this little idea, turns that into actual software. It makes it work, which is, to me, vibe coding. So Magic Patterns is an acknowledgement that that's what you need. You need a unified sort of language to speak, a simple language that all LLMs can understand, pattern-based stuff. LLMs excel with patterns.
Right.
That's how you're going to get leverage out of them. And that's what you need. But like a thing that is left out of this magic patterns idea. So like I'll read this. So interactive UI prototyping from prompts or screenshots, gathering user feedback, and using that to build sites, themes, or plugins like those in PageMotor. Well, without the PageMotor component in that equation, you have nothing.
So what is the point of them? So like you talk about prototyping a lot, right? So faster iteration without coding from scratch, and that's going to only accelerate, right? Like you mentioned that before, kind of, and then this company is creating this for the web developers to sort of help them with prototyping. But is that...
Well, the output has to go somewhere or it's not useful.
Right. Okay.
And if it's just this open-ended thing, well, how do you implement this in your specific context? That is really the challenge that developers face. That's what agencies have to do. That's where all the work is. So unless that part of the equation is solved, to me, it's kind of useless.
Interesting.
Ken makes another great point that's worth it for the audience at large. He says using JSON JavaScript object notation is better when you need precision, consistency, and reliability. It removes ambiguity. A natural language prompt like make the text blue could be interpreted in many ways. And we'll actually touch on this later about the specificity of prompting and that kind of thing. Another show that we looked at had a big segment on this, and it's so true. To get the best results from AI, you need to be as specific as possible. And so if it knows that, hey, I'm generating output for a specific environment like PageMotor, and here's the constraints I have to follow, everything is going to be so much tighter. You're not going to get these false positives where AI gives you a result, but it's not really the result you wanted. It's one interpretation of what you asked for, but not the right one. So using things like JSON notation and having an actual output system that this information goes into that's very clearly defined, that is how we make the most of the output from AI.
I just actually had a good idea, just a note for myself for next show. I'm going to start looking at how much money AI adjacent companies raised over the week, and I want to see where the money is flowing and moving, because this company, I believe they're also Magic Patterns. They raised a bunch of money recently. And I'm just thinking, like, it's just like catnip, all these things, just like, but what is exactly, it's so awesome to hear what you have to say about this, and like, what does it actually mean without, kind of throwing things in your blood.
Well, whenever anything like this comes up, like a new big shift, such as the shift towards AI, the big companies, they do two things. They try to develop an internal team to gain as much ground as possible. But through that process, they also realize, we need to do some acquisitions to speed this up.
Yeah, no, this can be, because I'm sure AI is probably number one, place where a lot of money is flowing right now. That will be interesting for our practical AI show. So let's move on. The next show that I looked at this week was Getting the Most Out of AI Coding on SyntaxFM by Wes and Scott. I really like their show. I thought that was
Wes Boss on Twitter. If any of you are familiar with him, he's got like 400,000 followers.
Very well done. I mean, very interactive, and I'm going to include all those links into the description of the show, so you guys can check it out if you are interested in to hear more about it. But one of the things that one of the key takeaways that they talked about getting the most out of AI coding was don't rely on AI for project scaffolding. So they talked about manually scaffolding the first 5 to 10%, installing dependencies, setting up folder structure, and then avoiding wasting time correcting AI's guesses about tooling, which is a bunch of Chinese to me. But what does this mean to you? Like because then I ask you all the time, like, why don't you use AI more to code what you're doing right now? And you're like, because I need to do this myself before I engage AI completely. So is that kind of what they're talking about? Is that
it is? I think they didn't take the argument far enough. They said the first 5 to 10% of the project, and what they mentioned was more structural in terms of like file structure, things like that, and first installation and all of that. But I take that another big leap above that. And it's not only that basic structure, and the initial data, which is its own huge topic, but setting up the languages, the common languages that the software, so the software that generates some meaningful output, could be anything. That software needs to have everything patternized. I mean, absolutely everything. Every interaction that can occur with the software needs to be patternized and well thought out so that LLMs can be trained in the most specific and precise manner possible. That is how, like I said, going back to this, these themes keep coming up. That's how we eliminate false positives. That's how we get more certainty with the AI output. It needs constraints, like very specific guardrails to say, hey, this is the context. This is the syntax for this context. Please fit it into exactly this mold.
Okay. And then when they talk about being brutally explicit with your prompts, we kind of mentioned that earlier. So what does that mean to you? And like kind of how can I do a better job with kind of prompting and being more explicit?
Well, this is great because the limitation here is you can only be as explicit as your input-output environment allows. If you're dealing with WordPress, you've got to do, well, in this case, do this. You've got to do like a billion exceptions for various things that might be different. Therefore, you can never be that explicit. You've always got to go down this rabbit hole of refinement, no matter what you're trying to do. That costs resources. It's too time intensive. It's not actually going to work. It's not going to scale. But if you have a very precise input-output environment that requires very specific data, you can be as precise as you like. Mm-hmm. And you can use documentation that the LLM is already trained on, so it knows exactly what is required in an environment. Ken's got a couple comments about this. He says, as soon as your LLM needs to look beyond your own product knowledge library, you must be cautious about what it pulls in. I have a comment about that. That's great. That's why having a comprehensive PageMotor Bible is essential for effective LLM training. Absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the themes I keep seeing with the generative code that we have messed with PageMotor so far is that when the AI output encounters a situation where it doesn't have a specific rubric for what the output needs to be, like say, hey, it has to be like this. Whenever it doesn't have that, it defaults to its training. Mm-hmm. And the training data sets for all these LLMs is poor. And what I mean when I say it's poor is that it can only do the patterns that it already has seen. It can only appeal to that. It's not creative in that way to say like, hey, actually, you guys suck. You gotta do it like this.
You gotta do that. Are you sure about this?
it just pulls in the existing patterns that it knows. And unfortunately, because we've been through this era where software could be crappy, the reality is that all the fallback data, all the fallback training data for coding LLMs is bad. Maybe controversial to say that, but it's just the facts. Until it is trained on very specific models that have been built to leverage its power and just pattern leverage in general. It's not specific to AI at all. Mm-hmm. Until that's the case, the creative output where AI goes outside the guardrails and goes beyond the product knowledge library that you have fed it for your specific use case, until that happens, that is going to continue to be a problem. So that I love that Ken brought that up, and that is a very interesting like niche aspect of this whole thing that you'll run into if you do it for any length of time. But that is a problem that needs to be solved. And like Ken said,
I guess it goes one of the things that Wes and Scott discussed in the show was that using structured prompts and rules files. So they're talking about creating reusable MD and text files, rule files, whatever that means.
Yeah. So the MD files are Markdown files.
Okay.
And that's great because so I might have a web page with documentation about how PageMotor works. And that'd be great. It's fine. That's perfectly sufficient. But you could also see the software with these Markdown files. A Markdown file is just it's a way of writing a document that can be interpreted and say, oh, I know that this is actually an H4 headline. I know that this is actually a link. I know this is actually that. But it's all just in a text file. It's real simple language. There's no like HTML tags or nothing to parse. It's real easy to train an LLM on a Markdown file. So really documentation is going to need to exist on internet so people can see it, and also in a concomitant .md Markdown file so that it can be fed to LLMs. The entire documentation for that software needs a basic Markdown text file library. Feed that into LLMs. They get all the training they need about specific knowledge for this software, and then it can use that to enhance and refine the output.
And then they talked about the break coding tasks and the bite-sized units, reusing logs and feedback loops, storing documentation in AI readable formats. And
Let's mention that real quick about breaking coding tasks into bite-sized units.
Mm-hmm.
This goes back to what Ken said. When you go outside of like your specifically trained data set, you're going to start getting some wonky results that are breaks in the pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And so and this is more true for dealing with crappy software with AI, but you want to be very specific, not just about input and output, but about the task you are trying to achieve. Just do this. Because as soon as it starts doing a bunch of other stuff, you get all this largesse, all this extra crap that doesn't really belong. And so if you want actually useful, good results with AI, you have to be really specific. One task, I used to have this thing for building web pages. Like in the age of attention, the age of social media, you have to be very precise about what you do on a particular web page or else the page won't work. And the mantra there is one page, one goal. And that extends to AI as well. You want to do one task, one piece of output.
Okay.
That way.
Would you add anything else to this kind of segment about making, getting the most out of AI coding that they may not have mentioned that you're already seeing?
Well, I do think the breaking coding tasks into bite-sized units, what we just mentioned, I think that will begin to fall away and we'll be able to do more per prompt, so to speak, once we realize that the translation unit, the thing into which the data will be fed and then eventually output, once these get real good, and once the training data, all the markdown files, all the documentation, all the rules, once that is really refined, then we'll be able to do really big things. Like say, okay, spit me out a new PageMotor instance with a seed file that is designed for a yoga studio where they're going to have calendar functionality, bookings, and they're also going to have a little bit of a merchandise section so they can display what they have in the front of their store. People can buy that. People can buy memberships and also an email list capability. It will be able to eventually, down the road here, I think about a year from now, we'll be able to feed that in and say, hey, PageMotor, do this, and boom, it'll spool up a site with all those assets predefined, pre-integrated, the whole bit. But a lot of groundwork has to be laid to get there. That goes back to the point about the scaffolding. There's a whole lot of planning.
Yeah, and one of the things that they talked about, and I think you already mentioned this, that LLM-friendly docs are the future, and that's the projects where I use the LLM.text. It's easier for AI to learn from. And so things like that, like it sounds like AI is not replacing the development, which a lot of people are like, oh my God, I don't think that that's the case. It's kind of like a sidekick, but you got to teach it your playbook, right?
Yeah,
so
AI is not replacing development. I want to be very clear on that.
But you got to tell AI what your playbook is so it can be the best assistant it can be for you, correct?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And you got to be more specific than you've ever been in your life. If you've ever raised a young kid, you got to be like super literal, super specific about a billion different things. It's absolutely tiresome. AI is going to be even worse.
I love it. All right. Any other things that you're seeing on this trend from the forums or from anything that are?
No, I think we're done with SyntaxFM.
Yeah, we're done.
But I'm going to run to the bathroom real quick. I'll be right back.
Okay, sounds good. Anyway, one of the things. Hi there. One of the things that we talked about with Chris is that we will be getting guests on the show. People that are actually creating something in terms of having AI products or something that is connected to practical AI. So we'll have a guest on the show, and we will continue this format of Q&A with all the latest trends that are happening in AI world. Because I don't know about you guys, but I'm having a really hard time sometimes keeping up with all the new things and kind of what Ken talked about, like what's real, what's not real. So it's going to be helpful to have these conversations about, thanks JV, about kind of what's happening in the world, and more importantly, like what is the reality versus what is this fog of illusion that I feel like a lot of times, like, I want to know what's real, what's not. So that's kind of the vision for the show. And I will try to moderate to keep this short and sweet, but I want us to get into a lot of good topics because I know Chris can talk for a long time. So my job is to keep him on track.
Classic cola.
Okay. Let's.
We're not sponsored by Poppy, but by God,
no,
I wish we were.
Not yet. All right. Well, next show that I took a look was The Agency Advantage, Lessons from Shopify for WordPress Product Makers. And that is a W Product Talk podcast with Katie Keith.
Are we skipping NVIDIA? We can skip NVIDIA. It's fine.
Yeah, I just think
No,
that
it's cool.
we will get to that if we have time
it's
later
boring.
on. But that I think that there'll be a lot helpful to talk about kind of how is Shopify, what is Shopify doing that WordPress is not? And I'm just kind of again
experiencing growth.
Well, yes, but I also want to give credit to all the creators that have created the shows, and it's been very interesting to review the shows and bring the trends here so we can talk about them. But if you're interested, I will be definitely dropping the links to go look, watch their show. But the first thing is Shopify did what WordPress won't. The Foxel model, freemium versus premium, and WordPress's missed agency channel. Do you know anything about that? Do you want to chime in on any of this?
I looked at Foxel today. So Foxel is sort of interesting. So Shopify has a bunch of APIs that developers can tap into to provide any kind of functionality you want for like a retail type website. But they don't put any of it together for you. They rely on the developers to just patch the whole thing together depending on what your needs are. But the reality is with retail stores, with any type of endeavor, there's larger patterns that exist. Stores want this, this, and this, and this. Okay. So there's basic loadouts that you would probably want to have if you were Shopify to satisfy these different like niche operations in retail. And Foxel realized this, and I actually can't believe that they're kind of a nascent company and this didn't happen like 6-7 years ago, especially with what I've heard about Shopify from one of my friends who pays them, $20,000 a month. But so they have developed a little platform where you can say, okay, I want this kind of store, and it basically spits it out for you. They call it crafting your experience. You put together your store based on what your needs are. And that is an agency focused company. Like their offering is actually for agencies. So Joe Schmo has a store, wants a Shopify store. He engages an agency. The agency has a deal with Foxel. And Foxel spits back the assets they're going to need. That's like the foundation for the project for their client. And then the agency who got this information from Foxel implements it and then tweaks it to taste for the end user who wants the Shopify store, like putting on branding assets, giving a little bit of unique design treatment, that kind of thing. So it really is a two-part solution. I think about this as like, well, the best solution would just be a one-stop shop, like the Joe Schmo talks to Foxel. But it's funny how this worked out because Shopify said, no, that's too specific for us. We don't have the resources to attack all these little vectors. Foxel says, well, we're not going to do all these little specific implementations. We don't want to focus on that. We want to focus on giving you this project framework. And there was actually a place for everybody in that chain based on the way, because of the fact Shopify kicked the can and Foxel sort of kicked the can too, because that's beyond the scope of what they can handle. And it's become this three-part process: end user, agency, Foxel, really, and Shopify. So maybe a four-part process. And that's how these things are getting put together now. And so there's been a cry among agency types in WordPress for over a decade now that WordPress should have agency-specific offerings. What does that mean? Maybe a WordPress that's tailored for agency development, something like that. But all that potential initiative is hamstrung by the WordPress architecture.
So some of the takeaways I'm going to tell you what the takeaways were, and then I want you to go with your take on that. The first one was Shopify's agency-led growth tactics leave WordPress behind. They talked about Shopify app developers are outperforming their WordPress counterparts by strategically leveraging agency partnerships for product distribution, credibility, and revenue generation. So that was the first thing, that somehow Shopify is doing something that I guess the WordPress wouldn't. And then they talked about the premium only models work when agencies are your go-to market. So Shopify apps like Foxel Bundles succeed without freemium models by targeting high-value agency partnerships over volume-based app store growth. Their strategy hinges on value alignment and not mass adoption. So what's your take on all of that, and like how does that?
So this is just like an extension of the previous topic here, but so WordPress has never embraced any specific third-party developers and said, hey, if you want to accomplish this, you go through this channel. Shopify kind of has, because they kicked the can on developing these niche implementations. Their whole ecosystem was sort of built on, yes, we are going to thrive because third parties are going to solve these specific problems.
Gotcha.
We don't have to put all this energy and resources into that. So they have elevated third parties, whereas WordPress has just sort of always had this hands off, like, well, it's just open, use whatever you like.
So another thing they talked about was support and integration with agencies are core to product strategy. They're not, so agencies aren't just referral partners. They're treated like extended teams. They're like Slack channel and support.
Yeah.
Onboarding, high priority, feature input, and this tight feedback loop enhances both product development and loyalty. And they talked about how WordPress ecosystem is still missing out because despite having enterprise-grade agencies, the WordPress plugin market hasn't embraced agencies as key distribution channels, largely due to pricing ceilings, fragmented plugin install methods, and support complexity. So what is that? I guess I care about, like, what is this signaling to you in terms of kind of the WordPress and Shopify dance, and what does that mean to kind of the future of the ecosystem and what that should look like, and what can we learn from that?
Well, let's break it down, like exactly what's happening here. So Shopify has all these third parties that perform critical functions that any real Shopify store is probably going to have to engage at some point. So I think I'm not sure the exact names. I think it's called Chargeify, something like that. So they handle, all this credit card processing. But for big vendors who do, many, many millions of dollars, there's different concerns for running credit cards. There's chargebacks. There's all these extra layers of things. There's, I think there's some FTC rules and stuff they have to abide by. So Chargeify handles all this. And again, I don't know if it's actually called Chargeify, something like that. So my buddy runs a supplement company or a plant-based protein company that's sort of branched out called Truvani. Truvani has millions and millions of dollars worth of sales, retail sales. They spend an ungodly amount of money per month on this Chargeify thing, but this Chargeify is not Spotify. It's a third-party company, but Spotify says, hey, if you need this, you go here. So they are lifting up this partner.
Not Spotify, I mean Shopify.
Shopify, my God.
Yeah. I was like,
yeah.
Where is Spotify coming from? Okay.
Shopify says, hey, if you need this go here. And it's pointing to a third-party, partner who provides this service. WordPress does not do that formally. They have not said, hey, like, because that's sort of a way, what you're saying there, if you're Shopify, you're saying this is the official solution, even though it's not directly affiliated with us. And so they're, that elevates them, that makes them like the God provider in that niche. Now, are there other smaller ones? Yes, because Chargeify is like really for high volume people with a lot of money. But, WordPress has always sort of been against taking this stance of, okay, this is the provider. Even though they kind of left that door open, they kind of also elevated their own things like WordPress VIP and automatic stuff. It's been like a quasi official provider for things. So but that's it's just never been, you either need to state this clearly or not dabble in it at all. WordPress hasn't done either very well, and I think that's caused a lot of problems. So
what do you think this trend is, if that continues, what do you think that means for Shopify? And then what could it potentially mean for like a PageMotor's environment? Because it sounds like Shopify is really trying to cement themselves in the e-commerce world to be like kind of a go-to place.
They're it for retail and physical inventory. They're it.
Right. And so like, what do you think that trend continue? Like what is this going? Like, what are you seeing? And like, is it a part of like a bigger chess game or?
Well, I think you just got to be honest about the situation. The situation is like for PageMotor, for example, there is no way I could build out myself all the functionality, all the third-party stuff that's going to be required, and get down into the details of really making stuff refined. There's no way I could run a company that does that. There's just no way me or an extension of me through a company could tackle all those initiatives. But a third-party plugin ecosystem run long enough certainly would. It certainly would. And then the question becomes like, well, what about preferred providers? Well, I think it's so from the perspective of PageMotor and third-party plugins, I am very interested in identifying which plugins are built the best. I know these will work the best. I know these will break the least for users. I can guarantee a better quality of output, knowing that they're more tightly integrated with the PageMotor architecture in general. So I'm keenly interested in identifying like what are the best pieces in the ecosystem, ultimately as this thing unfolds, because I know that will work best for end users. WordPress left it an open landscape, so you can build these things however you want. And it's widely known that some plugins are super crappy. They get abandoned over time. They don't do the right thing. They break, whatever. Like I'm taking the opposite approach. I want to work with plugin developers directly, even if I'm not getting any revenue from their operations. I still have a vested interest in them producing the highest quality output for their customers and having their code base be as tight as possible. And so I think what Shopify has done is merely the smartest way to do it. You acknowledge you can't do it all. You instead put your energies into making sure your partners can do the best job they can do, actually a manageable thing. Like I can give feedback to Ken about his Forms plugin, and we can make that thing as good as it can possibly be together. But I'm not in there building out all the details and dealing with all the support and all that stuff. Like that's too much. So to me, it's just like a survival.
But why do you think the WordPress is still sleeping on agency-led distribution?
Because they have taken this half-measure stance. They've left it open, but really automatic. It's sort of the provider of all the official stuff, and everything else is just nebulous. And there are no quality standards. The architecture itself does not promote quality standards. Plugins are totally open-ended. If you say, I want to make a WordPress plugin, and you go set up a WordPress plugin file, you get absolutely nothing. You inherit zero functionality. Anything you want to try to do with the software then is up to you. With PageMotor, for example, if you create a plugin, you inherit all the functionality inherent to every plugin that's ever existed on the PageMotor architecture. You get the basis, like you can say, hey, give me site options. And it gives you site options that are integrated into the admin panel. They save, they retrieve. They're there when you need them. So you have these UI pages already built. You have all these ways to integrate with the existing design. Like you have all this you inherit all of this functionality, all of this stuff that's already been built. It's not just an open-ended thing. We say, okay, go to work, do whatever you want. Hopefully you can figure it out. Like you inherit a lot of assets. And by doing that, that whole landscape can be made much, much, much better. But because WordPress is open, it's really tricky to try and solve these problems like this because then you're just playing Kingmaker. Then WordPress just has to play Kingmaker and say, oh, this is actually the official plugin for this.
Right.
But we're only saying that because we think this one's the most popular and therefore the one you should use. There's not physical reasons, like, code-based reasons why they would be able to say that.
All right. Well, any other thoughts about that before I move on to our last
move on.
topic? So last topic is more because the show is about practical AI. I saw this interesting interview by Dharmesh Shah, who's really playing with AI a lot. He's got Agent AI or something like that. He's got
this is HubSpot CTO.
Yeah. So he's very much he's very outspoken about AI, and he's kind of so when I saw his interview and I was like, I wonder if people that listen to our show will find the practical tools of how he actually uses AI to run literally this is what the topic was, how I use ChatGPT to run my $30 billion company. And I was like, well, I'm gonna bring this in and see what you have to say. So some of the key takeaways, he talks about vector embeddings and RAG and tool calling as his AI transformation stack. He talks about the combo unlocks personal business grade AI copilots that actually know your life or operations. Do you know much about it? Can you talk about what that even means? What is vector?
I checked out a lot of jargon there that I was not really familiar with.
Vector embeddings and RAG.
Yeah. So RAG, I don't even remember. I just looked this up, but it's basically, I think it's basically just so relevant. It's like fresh data.
Okay.
Fresh data. So he gave an example. He said I will ask it, like it's trained on all his emails and stuff like this, but it'll say, just give me the 5 most recent data points that you find along this query. So that's, that's the relevance. It's getting a higher relevance score for right now, because it's got emails back to 2010. That's not going to be that relevant for the current discussion. There's no reason for the LLM to have to push back that far. So basically, my takeaway from he describes all his processes. He's using AI a crazy amount. It's really pretty fascinating. It's worth a read or watching that episode of My First Million. But he's basically that's a limitation. Only going back to the 5 most relevant things, a limitation. It's using AI effectively, but also making sure he's using it as little as possible.
Okay.
So there was a lot of that. Like, those are pretty high level refinements. Like, this guy knows what he's doing.
Yeah, he talks about how he runs his life and HubSpot workflows through custom GPTs, using his embedded personal data. And he says, if you're not using ChatGPT every day, you are missing out, which I know it's not our audience here, but I was like, I want to hear more about what he has to say, obviously. He talked about predicting near future shift from AI tools to hybrid teams of digital and human workers, requiring new roles like agentic managers, onboarding systems, and performance tracking for digital agents. So he's really embracing the combination of kind of AI and teams versus like one or the other. He also believes AI will amplify creativity, not diminish it, especially for non-technical creators who can manifest ideas with zero code and design skills. And he reveals massive usage delta. Non-technical users using plug-and-play GPTs versus API-embedded use cases can yield drastically different AI performance. What the heck does that mean?
That means people who are using API. So this would be like a code translator, a thing that speaks code. If you're using that, that's like a sophisticated way of interfacing with an AI. And that's sort of like having the PageMotor, that's this component I keep talking about that is ready to accept the input. If you're doing that, you're going to run circles around everyone who's just using these open-ended prompts. To me, there's no comparison between the two. One's a serious operator, and the other one's just in the playground farting around on the monkey bars.
Well, what I was getting out of this, because I use ChatGPTs, the custom GPTs that we create in my business, in my recruiting company, and it's been saving us a ton in operations. Like, I know you guys are coders and web developers, and like, you've got so much that you do on the back end with all the code and AI, but I also love how AI is helping the actual operations of the business. And I'm just curious to hear from the audience if they want to chime in and see how they actually use AI in the business, not just building the thing, but actually kind of running their lives and making it better. He talked about you and AI is a winning mindset, not you versus AI.
Yeah, he says you to the power of AI, like an exponential.
Right.
You with AI is the exponential.
I didn't know how do you say that in English? So you
to the AI power.
Okay, you to the AI power is the winning mindset.
I do like that. It's good coinage.
Which is kind of what we have here. So
I do want to mention one thing he said. He said, smart startups are building around what AI can sort of do right now, betting that rapid model improvements will soon make the experience great. I merely want to push back on that a little bit and say this part where he says, betting that rapid model improvements will soon make the experience great. The reality here is that rapid model improvements are only possible if the vehicles into which the LLMs are feeding their output improve. Those vehicles expect a certain type of input. That expectation needs to be designed sort of for AI and to leverage what AI does well. And until that happens, the outputs are really not going to level up. So like in math, we have this concept of linear, geometric, and then exponential. We're not going from linear to geometric or from geometric to exponential without these input-output components, basically our software, our native software that we work with, without these things improving. Will not happen.
So his thing that he built, and right now it's in beta. I actually went and registered. It's Agent AI. It's a no-code platform for AI agents, which I know you love that, the no-code thing. But I guess anybody can submit their custom-made GPTs and whatnot for like kind of a agentic, help, and he's playing with that. But I'm always looking for the actual use cases and how does the AI help you right now, right? So obviously with PageMotor, we're seeing a lot of that. And do you have anything to say about kind of like what he's talking about using it? I mean, I don't know, like what do you think about?
I want to turn this back around.
like he treats GPT as strategic hire, right? So like he literally is trying to think about how can I do what I do with a lot more help with my, GPTs and other things that he kind of, works on. So I was just curious, like, was there anything about it that stood out to you? Because he brings a little bit of a business mindset, we talked about the operations, I mean, the back end and front end development, but he's kind of bringing, because he's a CTO, he built HubSpot, he's really, he's out there on the frontier, but now he's bringing this business, like, how can we actually use it to be efficient and effective with the business overall, not just like coding different things and
right. I think about AI in terms of code mostly, because that's my milieu. What I got from his discussion was that he thinks about it in terms of human actions, emails, responses, decision making, that type of thing. Maybe processes that are not executed by code, even like grocery lists, for example. And I said earlier, I want to turn this back around. Like, why don't you share what you have built, a couple things you've done with AI, because those are, you've layered over some processes there, some business processes. So that's more of the human side, which is exactly what Dharmesh is talking about. So give us a couple examples of that, because I think that's pretty fascinating as well.
Well, in my recruiting, so we recruit salespeople for companies, and what the first bot I built was my prospecting bot. So I would feed information about like my prospect, the company I'm calling and talking to, and then I would train what to look for, the pain points, what they care about. And literally my research went from like 30 minutes per prospect to now it's like 5 minutes, because it spits out exactly what I need. So by the time I hop on the call with the prospect, I already know what their pain points are, how is it connected. So that's my first bot I built that I was very proud of. And then from there, my next bot I built was for my recruiters. When we take notes with candidates, those notes are being recorded in the phone company that we use, online company, the transcript. And then we have a bot that is preset with interview questions we ask. We feed the transcript and it spits out the notes in a very formatted way. So before it would take us 30 minutes per candidates to get that out. Now it takes like 5 minutes. So we like keep on squeezing the time that we can actually put serving to client versus us like on operational typing, researching and doing things. And the third bot that I built was it's in hiring we use scorecard, which is basically the requirements of what we're looking for in a candidate. It's like a weighted table. And once we interview somebody, we put their resume and the interview notes through that bot, and it gives us what is the match percentage. So anything over 85, we love it. Anything under between 75 and 85, we kind of look at it. But instead of now researching like LinkedIn profile, what are they worked, AI does all of that stuff for us, and it kind of tells us like what that person worked. So that by itself is saving me hours a day, because I don't have to review and make sure the client's going to be happy. AI is doing that for me and provides me that feedback. And the last GPT bot I built was because of all the newsletters that I don't want to read, but I do want to read what's important for my business. So I built the bot where I just feed all the newsletters and ask them to mark what's relevant to me and my audience. And then it kind of marks it up, and then I just read that. I love AI, but I love AI in the way that is different than you and your guys, because for me, it's like, I use AI to make my life easier. And I'm a giddy girl about it. Like, I think for the first time, AI helps me with whatever I want to help. And that's been incredible. So that's all I'm going to say before I start blabbling around.
It's beautiful. Yeah, you're the biggest AI fan here for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's like, how can I maximize my time and just kind of do it? But yeah, I'm learning a lot, and I'm always curious. If you guys have any tips or anything like that, please share. It will be awesome to read that.
Oh, Ken makes a point real quick. I want to touch on this. He says, for example, the generative AI videos that have gone viral recently were created by people in video production who understand what good AI output looks like, but they iterate repeatedly to achieve the perfect result. So I saw these, and when they first started coming out like last year, I looked at this pretty in depth because I wanted to see if I could get my daughter to make these videos because she likes making videos. And I looked at it, it was horrifying. Oh my God. They're using like 4 different types of AI. Like there's one that spits out like illustration style imagery. And then they feed that into this thing that makes it animations because it's not good at the illustration part, but it is good at taking a base that you put in there and doing it. They have another one that's for layering on sound. They have another one that's for actually moving mouths and stuff to actually match the sound. Like it is a lot of parts. They were absolutely like, non-trivial.
But some of those videos are like this bunnies now jumping on the trampoline. There's like 12 of them or something. Clearly they're AI generated and they're not like real, but they look so cute and real. And those videos are already going viral. And I can only imagine.
Well, they're popping, but the point is that this is a serious process. Like you're not just gonna pop into a thing and say, give me a cute video with bunnies jumping on the trampoline.
If you're trying to get as many clicks as possible on TikTok, yeah, you're gonna make this video look amazingly real because people I thought that was the real video because somebody told me it's not. So
you gotta work on that AI
that's
filter.
Another discussion. Well, listen, do you have anything to add on the PageMotors this week, the latest and the greatest, kind of like quick summary before we wrap this up?
Yeah, it was kind of a boring week on the PageMotor front. I coded all week and I feel like not much happened. But so like last week I showed you guys the new users management interface. I had a bunch of holes to patch up, like security holes, and I went over that a whole bunch. And I had to think like a hacker all week. So I patched up all the holes there. I've done everything with the user management system now, except for integrating user options for plugins, a valet method that will enable you to add user options to the whole environment, if that's what you want to do. So that's going to come up next week. I also unified all the interfaces. So like if you went into like your theme and you went into editable elements and you clicked on something, like that UI was a certain way and the JavaScript was a certain way there and all that. And then if you went elsewhere to like just your general plugin site settings and set all those, that UI was just a little different. Like, so now all the headers and stuff are unified, the header areas, the way the forms output, the JavaScript that speaks to them, even the way the JavaScript is executed, there's very specific things now that are common to all the elements. So I went and did a whole bunch of that, this commonality thing that plays into the whole AI thing. You want patterns to be as repeated as possible. If you have this and it looks like that, they should probably work the same way. They definitely should work the same way. So I put those things in there. I do feel like there was something interesting. So let me check my notes real quick. Something worth mentioning. Something else that was not super boring.
While you're looking, I just want to say that the more I'm learning about like the back ends of AI, it's fun to learn the how good it looks to the public, but the more I'm learning about how it all works on the back end, the more I'm excited about what you guys are building with PageMotor, because you need this more than ever right now because of all the legacy crap that's being dragged with WordPress and everything. I'm so proud of PageMotor and what it represents and all the things you're going to accomplish with all that.
Yeah, that was it. I just looked over the list. You can delete users now. But the rest of the stuff is just super boring. All these back-end refinements. I did do an interesting feedback system that I employed in the user management panel and like edit user screen and all this stuff. So like if information is incorrect, you get a real nice, error feedback about what was wrong. Like there's warnings, errors, success messages, notifications. So I did a unified system for all that. That's in the PageMotor tools, UI object, for those interested. So that's all coming. I don't know when I'm going to do a release. I still got some more things I want to put in for like the 0.3 update. And I want to get short codes working, which will enable me to get modular content working for everybody. So there's more on the table. So I'm still in the lab for now, but what we have with 0.2.2, which everybody has access to, that is sufficient for playing with these plugins and really starting to try and dig through that. And I think that's still where the most gains are had. Did do one important piece of documentation this week. I know Ken has looked at it, but basically I identified all the files, all the objects and main models in PageMotor, and also the helpful tool methods that anyone who builds on the software would need to reference to do anything of value. And so that documentation page now on the forums is super, super helpful. If you are going to play with an LLM and PageMotor, you definitely need to feed it that document. And I think I should take it a step further now and provide a downloadable Markdown file for all the relevant documents that have been built on the forums already. So that's probably the next step now, is providing .md files of all this information, and maybe even sticking them in the software itself, like a little library. You say, okay, here's the library you want to feed in there.
And today is also the last day to sign up for
oh yeah, forgot about that little
our beta thing. Do you want to say?
Yeah, so the PageMotor beta is closing today at 5 p.m. U.S. Central Daylight Time. That is in 4 hours and 45 minutes from right now. So the response to the beta has been super, super good. The activity has been outrageous, and I need to make sure it doesn't spiral out of control. So I got to close the beta.
Yeah, because you'll probably open it in a month or two, right?
No, well, I think the earliest we'll see it again is October 1st.
Okay. All right. Cool.
But the price will be higher at that point.
Yeah, makes sense. All right. So I will continue to scout internet and everything for all the trends on practical AI and all the things that we care about here for next week. And thanks for coming and hanging out with us. Hopefully you got something out of this and it was helpful. And if you have anybody that you think is doing something really cool with practical AI, can you please let me know in the forums, and then I will either try to get them on the show or figure out how to kind of get more people that are actually building things and talking to us.
That is something I'd like to look at. Like, are there examples? So like, I kind of feel like the answer to this is no, but I'm sure it's not no. And I want to see if anyone's seen anything. But like, has anyone actually built anything with AI that's not just like a one-off thing, like a novelty where you can install this on a server and do it? Like, is there anything actually useful? Because as far as I'm concerned, the PageMotor plugins I've seen are quite literally the most potentially useful in a real world scenario things that I've seen built with AI or even with the assistance of AI so far. So if you're aware of things like that, I want to start checking those out. I'm sure there's something we can learn there. And I'd love to see that, and we can share that with everybody.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Chris. Thanks everybody for joining us. This was a blast. And I always like talking to my husband. So
your husband?
My husband.
Well, now the cat's out of the bag.
The cat is out of the bag. All right. Well, thanks everybody. We'll see you again next week.
All right, guys. Appreciate you being here. We'll see you. I'm ending stream right now. Bye-bye.
Bye.